So, you've read about your experts, the experts that your clients will be able to call on. We have them all, but we don't use them all. So, let's just present them in a different manner because, yes, the house is marvelous. It's given us a structure foundation, so it's easy to relate to and it's easy to remember. But now we need to introduce the mind dynamics profile man. But we're going to build it systematically. So when you see the man in totality, or the image, it's not a man, it's the image in totality, you will be able to relate to it immediately. So we're going to go back to the information processing theory, and we're going to unpack the profile. You see, sensory input means all of your senses. But in the mind dynamics profile, we only refer to the paired senses, which are your 2 ears and your 2 eyes. So that sensory, your 2 ears and your 2 eyes represent sensory input in terms of the mind dynamics profile instrument. Okay, the next step is processing. And you know the triune brain, survival brain, limbic system, and the neocortex, or the thinking brain. So when we look at the profile, we don't negotiate about survival brain. That's a given. So it doesn't feature in the profile. It's a given. Without that, you're dead. It doesn't matter what your profile is like under the circumstances. So, in terms of processing, if you think of the limbic system, we call that the bottom brain. Yes, we do feel emotions here, but it's not where emotions occur. I know the literature says your emotional part of the brain is just above your palate. I know that, but I think you'll agree with me that we feel emotions here. And there's a theory that says there's a similar structure to the cells in the limbic system and the cells in the heart. And that's why emotion is felt in the heart. But it's actually felt or processed in the limbic system just above your palate. So when information flows, remember, we've just said we've got 2 eyes, 2 ears. It flows to what? To the limbic system, the bottom part of the brain. And we call it the bottom part of the brain. Remember, the reptilian brain is not the bottom brain. That's the survival brain. It's non-negotiable. So you can leave it out of the equation from now on. Okay, so the bottom brain is the limbic system. And then what's the opposite of bottom? Top. The top brain is a thinking part of the brain. So if you look in your manual, you'll see that clearly. So information flows, and it either flows through or pauses on the bottom brain before it gets to the top brain. When it gets to the top brain, information needs to move to the left or to the right. Okay? It selects. It can go in either direction, but through your genetic endowment, and also through your upbringing, conditioning over time, one side of the brain tends to be more dominant. It tends to lead, and the other one tends to follow. It can change, but we all tend to have one side of the brain that's more dominant, either bottom or top, or left or right. But when we talk about processing, that's not all. We don't just talk about the left or the right side of the brain. It's the back or the front part of the left or right side of the brain. You can see it's getting tricky. So don't get lost here. It's simple. Sensory input travels through the limbic bottom brain to the top brain. The top brain subdivides into left and right, but it doesn't just subdivide into left and right. It also subdivides into back and front. So there's a place of overlap where you process your information more often than not. And then it needs to flow back through the limbic system and out through your muscles. And for that, we use the hands, or the hands and the feet. We use the hands and the feet as to symbolize or to represent motor output. The hands represent communication, both verbal and written. The hands also represent action in terms of the way you would work with your hands. And then the feet represent how you step forward. Once you've made your decision in the thinking part of the brain, how do you act on it? And for that reason, we use 2 feet. And we're going to go into depth. What do each of these parts mean just now? But for this module, what is important to remember? Information input is represented by 2 eyes and 2 ears. Information processing is represented by 3 brains, each color-coded in blue and red. And then our output is represented by hands, communication, feet, output. Be sure to know that the mind dynamics profile is not an anatomic model. It is a functional model. And that's why we use the eyes and the ears and these different icons of the brain and the hands and the legs, the feet. It's to represent a functional model. It's how we function. This is how it works. How do we know that? Because we've done thousands and thousands of profiles. And every single time that I've done a profile, or any one of the other APs, I've always silently waited for somebody to say, this is not true. It has never happened. It has never happened. Because the moment you nail dominance, which is going to be the next module, but the moment you figure out, in terms of all these pairs, which one in each of these pairs does this person specialize in? Which is the main expert? Which eye is the main expert? Which ear is the main expert? Bottom or top brain? Which one is the expert? Left or right brain? Which one's the expert? Front or back brain? Which one's the expert? 2 hands? Which one's the expert? 2 legs? Which one's the expert? And that leads into a discussion around dominance. And that will follow soon.